It's week 18 of the NFL season, and here are my predictions for this week. But first, how did I do last week? In week 17, I went 13-3 in my predictions. And before getting into the video, I want to say Happy New Year to everyone watching, and I hope you all have an amazing 2025. So kicking off the week on Saturday, we have the 3-13 Browns versus the 11-5 Ravens. The Browns are coming off a 20-3 loss against the Dolphins, and in that game, Dorian Thompson-Robinson went 24-47 with 170 yards and an interception. And now in his career, he has the worst touchdown to interception ratio ever, with 1 career touchdown and 10 interceptions. But Jerry Jeudy still had a very good game, with 12 receptions for 94 yards. And on defense, Myles Garrett had 2 sacks on his 29th birthday, and that puts him at 14 on the year. Then the Ravens are coming off a 31-2 win against the Texans. In that game, Lamar Jackson went 10-15, 168 yards and 2 touchdowns, while also having 87 yards rushing and a touchdown. Then Derrick Henry had 147 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Mark Andrews had 2 receptions, 68 yards and a touchdown. This is still a must-win game for the Ravens, since they have not clinched their division yet, and I have the Ravens winning. Then we have the 8-8 Bengals versus the 10-6 Steelers. The Bengals are coming off a 30-26 win against the Broncos. In that game, Joe Burrow went 39-49, 412 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and he has now thrown at least 250 yards and 3 touchdowns in his last 8 games. And also in that game, Chase Brown had 67 yards rushing, and T. Higgins had a massive game with 11 receptions, 131 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But Chase Brown is questionable this week with an ankle injury. Then for the Steelers, they're coming off a 29-10 loss against the Chiefs. Russell Wilson in that game went 23 of 37, 205 yards, and an interception. Najee Harris had 74 yards rushing, and Pat Freiermuth led them with 7 receptions and 60 yards. But with that loss, the Steelers have now lost 3 games in a row, and the Bengals are on a 4-game winning streak. And with how hot the Bengals have been lately, I have them winning and staying alive for their chance to make the playoffs. Then moving over to Sunday, the 9-7 Texans versus the 3-13 Titans. In the Texans' loss against the Ravens, CJ Stroud went 17 of 31, 185 yards, and an interception, and Nico Collins led them with 3 receptions and 59 yards. Then for the Titans, they're coming off a 20-13 loss against the Jaguars. Mason Rudolph in that game went 19 of 31, 193 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Tajay Spears led them with 95 yards rushing, and Calvin Ridley had 5 receptions for 84 yards. This week, the Titans plan to play both Mason Rudolph and Will Levis during the game, and the Texans are completely locked into the 4 seed. They can't move up or down, so they're most likely going to rest all their starters. So I have the Titans winning. Then we have the 4-12 Panthers versus the 8-8 Falcons. The Panthers are coming off a 48-14 loss against the Buccaneers. Bryce Young went 15 of 28, 203 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and Adam Thielen had 5 receptions, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Then on defense, they gave up 551 yards, 33 first downs, and a total of 6 touchdowns. Then the Falcons are coming off a 30-24 loss against the Commanders in overtime. Michael Penix went 19 of 35, 223 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Bijan Robinson had 90 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, and Drake London had 7 receptions for 106 yards, and now has over 1,000 yards on the season. Then on their defense, they had 5 sacks and an interception, and I have the Falcons winning this game. Then the 5-11 Saints versus the 9-7 Buccaneers. The Saints are coming off a 25-10 loss against the Raiders. During that game, Spencer Rattler went 20 of 36, 218 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, and led the team with 46 yards rushing. Then Jawan Johnson had 6 receptions for 66 yards. Then for the Buccaneers, in their win against the Panthers, Baker Mayfield had an amazing game, going 27 of 32, 359 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Then Bucky Irving had 113 yards rushing and 77 yards receiving, and Mike Evans led them with 8 receptions, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and now has 915 yards on the season. So he's just 85 yards shy of having 1,000 yards in his first 11 seasons. Then on the Buccaneers defense, they had 5 sacks and held the Panthers just to 204 yards, and I have the Buccaneers winning. Then we have the 13-3 Bills versus the 3-13 Patriots. The Bills are coming off a 40-14 win against the Jets, Josh Allen went 16 of 27, 182 yards and a touchdown, and also had a rushing touchdown during that game. Then James Cook had 53 yards rushing and a touchdown. Then Amari Cooper had 3 receptions, 56 yards and a touchdown. Then the Patriots are coming off a 40-7 loss against the Chargers. During that game, Drake May had 117 yards and a touchdown. Antonio Gibson had 63 yards rushing, and Demario Douglas had 4 receptions, 46 yards and a touchdown. These teams played each other back in week 16, and it was very close. The Bills still won 24-21, but with the Bills clinching the number 2 seed in the AFC. But the Bills head coach said Josh Allen will start the game, but will only play a short amount of time. So I think this is going to be a very close game, and I have the Patriots winning. Then the 4-12 Jaguars versus the 7-9 Colts. In the Jaguars win against the Titans, Mac Jones went 15 of 22, 174 yards and 2 touchdowns. Travis Etienne Jr. had 49 yards rushing, and Brian Thomas Jr. had 7 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. And he's having a very good rookie season with 80 receptions, 1,159 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Then for the Colts, they're coming off a 45-33 loss against the Giants. During that game, Joe Flacco went 26 of 38, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Jonathan Taylor had 125 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And Alec Pierce had 6 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown. And this week, Anthony Richardson is still questionable. With both of these teams eliminated from playoffs, it's a meaningless game besides draft order, and I still think the Colts are going to win. Then the 11-5 Commanders versus the 7-9 Cowboys. And the Commanders win against the Falcons. Jaden Daniels went 24 of 36, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, and also led the team with 127 yards rushing. Then Olamide Zaccheaus led the team with 8 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Then the Cowboys are coming off a 41-7 loss against the Eagles. Cooper Rush had 147 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Rico Dowdle had 104 yards rushing, and now has 1,000 yards on the season. And Brandon Cooks led them with 4 receptions and 52 yards. The Commanders are still playing for the 6th seed, which they currently hold, but have the same record as the Packers, and I have the Commanders winning. Then the 3-13 Giants versus the 13-3 Eagles. And the Giants win against the Colts. Drew Lock went 17 of 23, 309 yards, and 4 touchdown passes. Then he also had a rushing touchdown. Then Malik Neighbors led the team with 7 receptions, 171 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now on the season, he has 104 receptions, over 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Then in the Eagles win against the Cowboys, Kenny Pickett went 10 of 15, 143 yards, and a touchdown. Then during the game, he got injured. Then Tanner McKee came in and went 3 of 4 with 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Saquon Barkley had 167 yards rushing, which puts him at 2,005 yards on the season. And Devontae Smith had 6 receptions for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Eagles are most likely going to sit most of their starters. They could potentially still play Saquon, so he can try to break the single season rushing record, but I think the Giants are going to win. Then the 4-12 Bears versus the 11-5 Packers. The Bears are coming off a 6-3 loss against the Seahawks. In that game, Caleb Williams went 16 of 28, 122 yards, and an interception. DeAndre Swift had 53 yards rushing. Then DJ Moore had 6 receptions for 54 yards. Then the Packers are coming off a 27-25 loss against the Vikings. Jordan Love went 19 of 30, 185 yards, and a touchdown. Josh Jacobs had 69 yards rushing and a touchdown. And Romeo Doubs led the team with 7 receptions for 58 yards. And coming into this week, the Packers are expected to play all their starters, since they're still competing for the 6th seed. And with how much the Bears have been struggling this season, I have the Packers winning. Then the 9-7 Seahawks versus the 10-6 Rams. In the Seahawks win against the Bears, Geno Smith went 17 of 23 with 160 yards. Then Zach Charbonnet had 57 yards rushing. Then Noah Fant led the team with 4 receptions for 43 yards. Then on their defense, defense, they had 7 sacks and an interception. Then for the Rams, they're coming off a 13-9 win against the Cardinals. Matt Stafford went 17 of 32 with 189 yards. Kyren Williams had 56 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Puka Nacua had 10 receptions and 129 yards. And the Rams are going to be resting their starters this week, so I have the Seahawks winning. Then the 8-8 Dolphins versus the 4-12 Jets. In the Dolphins win against the Browns, Tyler Huntley went 22 of 26 with 225 yards and a touchdown, and led the team with 52 yards rushing and a touchdown. Then Tyreek Hill had 9 receptions for 105 yards. Then for the Jets, in their loss against the Bills, Aaron Rodgers went 12 of 18, 112 yards and 2 interceptions, and also had a safety. Then when they put in Tyrod Taylor, he went 11 of 14, 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then their leading receiver was Garrett Wilson with 7 receptions, 66 yards and a touchdown. But this week, Tua and Jalen Waddle are both questionable again, and they missed last week's game against the Browns. But it's still a must-win game for them since they're still able to make the playoffs. But with all their injuries, and with it being a divisional game, the Jets are going to try to play spoiler for them, and I have the Jets winning. Then the 15-1 Chiefs versus the 9-7 Broncos. In the Chiefs win against the Steelers, Patrick Mahomes went 29 of 38, 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had 20 yards rushing and a touchdown. Then Travis Kelce had 8 receptions, 84 yards and a touchdown. And with that touchdown, he passed Tony Gonzalez for the most touchdowns in Chiefs history. Then for the Broncos, in their loss against the Bengals, Bo Nix went 24 of 31, 219 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Jaleel McLaughlin had 69 yards rushing, and Marvin Mims Jr. had 8 receptions, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And on defense, they had a combined 7 sacks, and Zach Allen had 3.5. The Chiefs are resting all their starters this week, and the Broncos still need to win this game to make the playoffs. But I still think it's going to be a pretty close game, and I have the Chiefs winning. Then the 10-6 Chargers versus the 4-12 Raiders. In the Chargers win against the Patriots, Justin Herbert went 26 of 38, 281 yards and 3 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins had 76 yards and a touchdown, and Ladd McConkey had 8 receptions, 94 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's having a great rookie season with 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Then for the Raiders, they're coming off their 2nd straight win, and in that win against the Saints, Aiden O'Connell went 20 of 35 with 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Amir Abdullah had 115 yards rushing, and Brock Bowers had 7 receptions for 77 yards. And during that game, he broke 2 rookie records. He now has the most receptions by a rookie and has the most receiving yards as a rookie by a tight end. So on the season, he has 108 receptions and 1,144 yards. The Raiders have been playing very well lately, but the Chargers are still expected to play their starters this week, and I have the Chargers winning. Then the 6-10 49ers versus the 7-9 Cardinals. The 49ers are coming off a 40-34 loss against the Lions. In that game, Brock Purdy went 27 of 35, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Then Isaac Garango had 34 yards rushing and 4 receptions for 65 yards. Then Ricky Pearsall led the team with 8 receptions, 141 yards and a touchdown, and that was his first career 100-yard game. But Brock Purdy is questionable this week. Then for the Cardinals, in their loss against the Rams, Kyler Murray went 33 of 48, 321 yards, a touchdown and 2 interceptions. Michael Carter led them with 70 yards rushing, and Trey McBride had 12 receptions, 123 yards, and a touchdown, and now has 104 receptions, 1,081 yards receiving, and 1 touchdown on the season. With all the 49ers injuries, I have the Cardinals winning. Then moving to Sunday Night Football, the biggest game of the week, the 14-2 Vikings versus the 14-2 Lions, and whoever wins this game will win the NFC North and be the number 1 seed in the NFC. In the Vikings win against the Packers, Sam Darnold went 33 of 43, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, and that was a career high in passing yards for Sam Darnold. Then Aaron Jones had 47 yards rushing, and Justin Jefferson had 8 receptions for 92 yards. But Aaron Jones is questionable this week. Then for the Lions, in their win against the 49ers, Jared Goff went 26 of 34, 303 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs had 117 yards rushing and a touchdown, and had 4 receptions for 46 yards. Then Jameson Williams led them with 5 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. The last time they played each other was back in Week 7, where the Lions won 31-29, but this season, the Lions' only 2 losses came at home. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. I could see both teams scoring over 30 points, and I have the Vikings winning. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.